Welcome back for another video. In this video we're going to catch up with the experts. Over 80% rolled their transfers last week, so a ton of transfer activity guaranteed this week as the game opens up. Between all the participants they've got 5 top 100 finishes, 51 top 1Ks and 326 top 10Ks. The most stacked league in the history of FPL. Hit subscribe to follow the experts' data each week this season. Kicking things off with the manager highlight then, and Peter's taken the top spot after scoring 67 points last game week. That puts him at 158 points already in total, and he's just outside the top 10k. It was a low scoring game week too. Did you manage to beat the experts' average of 48? A few of you have asked, so if you like the dark mode theme here, I'll link to it below in the description. So, hundreds of free transfers. What's the breakdown this week? Just 4% are rolling the transfer, exactly a half are spending 1, 42% are making 2 moves and 3% are making 3. There are a couple of wildcards active this week as well, the first of the season. We've got their team to run through later as well. So with all those transfers spent, let's look at which players are coming in and out of their teams. This might surprise you given the discrepancy between their total points, but it's Jackson first and Mbumo second. 38% of the experts are picking up the Chelsea forward this week. Chelsea do have back-to-back home games against Luton and then Nottingham Forest, and then followed by Bournemouth away. Jackson's has looked lively to be fair, 4th among all forwards for expected goals. So 36% are selling João Pedro, despite the news of Enciso's injury, which should improve his expected minutes a bit. If you're running with a front three of Haaland, João Pedro and a 4.5 mil forward, some have been looking at upgrading the 4.5 mil forward instead. The question is, if you do that, when would you realistically use João Pedro? He is a great enabler, but if you're unlikely to use him much, then he's a waste of 5.5 mil, and a better makeway would be selling him rather than the 4.5 mil forward. So when we look at Brentford's fixtures, it's certainly not too late to get on Mbumo. 3 home games in Brentford's next 4. 15% of the experts have brought him in. Very close behind is Foden though. Man City also have an amazing run of games ahead, and if Haaland's your only Man City attacker, there's an understandable temptation to double up with Foden, who has played very well in De Bruyne's absence. He's created 9 chances so far, which is joint most in the league. Alvaro's another good option, 1.1 mil cheaper, and he's been brought in by 10% this week. So a massive 35% have dropped Gabriel after very disappointing back-to-back benchings. That said, given both Timber and Tomiyasu are out, there's a strong chance of him actually starting this one. So if you are in a pinch, don't worry about it too much if you need to start him for 1 week. Long term, the concern is that it does look like his involvement will depend a lot on Zinchenko. When Zinchenko plays, then Gabriel likely does. If this weekend is the return of Zinchenko as a regular starter, then there's actually still a good chance that he becomes a regular starter. Though obviously if one of your players is dependent on another, that's not an ideal position. So to pick out some of the Gabriel replacements the experts are bringing in, Gvardiol, Gusto, Udogie, Chilwell, Ruben Diaz, Colwill, Henry and Saliba. All of these are great picks and you can't go wrong with any of these. Let's quickly pull up the defensive data after 2 games. Man City are top in the league for expected goals conceded with 0.62. Hence Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz and Ederson are all on the most bought list. Brentford are in 3rd, hence the Henry pick. Fulham rock bottom in the league for expected goals conceded, so it could actually be a week where the early Martinelli sellers are punished. He does tend to play worse when lined up with Nketiah though, since Nketiah doesn't interchange much, doesn't often bring others into the game as much as Jesus, and to be fair that's not his game in comparison. However, this week Jesus is back in training already, which is great news for anyone who ends up holding on to him, though we may not see Jesus against Fulham. So a quick look at the chip usage, and then we'll look at captaincy and the experts team. So this week there's 2 wildcards active and 2 bench boosts active. We heard from Jonas, who has his bench boost active this week. He's finished top 1k and top 10k in the last few years. Here's his bench boost team. Originally his plan was to sell Gabriel, but after the news of Shaw's injury, he said he's still likely to use it, but instead selling Shaw. Here's what he had to say. I'm actually not the biggest fan of the bench boost since it often means money on your bench. Therefore it feels good to use it early this year and I don't have to think as much of the bench. Also, Ben Crellin talking about potentially less appealing double game weeks this year for a bench boost played a part. I've not pressed the button yet, but since I'm planning to do Shaw to Gvardiol, I think my bench looks great with Turner, Estepinian, Henry and João Pedro. Best of luck with the bench boost this week if you see it through, Jonas. So the first wildcard of the season is active among the experts. We heard from Marco who's got his active. He's finished top 10k a couple of times, including 13k last season as well. Here's his wildcard team. He's got Sanchez in goal, Zinchenko, Chilwell, Estepinian, Saka, Odegaard and Mbumo, Foden, Haaland, Jackson and Alvarez. On the bench he's got Areola, Trippier, Botman and Sarr, and here's what he had to say. When I set up my team for Game Week 1, I didn't plan or imagine that I'd have my wildcard active in Game Week 3, but a string of bad decisions and unfortunate events has forced me to push the button, with the likes of James, Chukwuemeka and Bulldog all flagged, Gabriel and João Pedro rotation risks, and the recent Salah to Saudi rumours circulating. I decided to take the opportunity and chase the upside. Sitting around 3.5 million in the world, it's been an underwhelming start to the season, and the opportunity to get in players like Mbeumo have been killing me, plus restructuring my team to a 3-4-3 formation was the catalyst for making a decision. Attacking the current fixture swing with 3 Chelsea, 3 City and 3 Arsenal, and planning for future fixtures with 2 Newcastle on the bench for Game Week 5 onwards, I feel much better set up to attack the next phase of the season. Another regret was not leaving any money in the bank in my Game Week 1 team, and this team has 2 million in the bank to react to any more inevitable unforeseen events or transfer market incomings and outgoings. Good luck with the wildcard, Marco. Love the team. So on to the experts captaincy, and we'll keep it short and sweet. You can probably guess the results, or perhaps you can't actually. 99% are on Haaland captain. A single manager has gone rogue and is on Chilwell captain this week. On the one hand, there was the news this week that Mudryk is out for the Luton game with injury, which is good news for you Chilwell owners. He should be very advanced throughout the game. On the other hand, it's Haaland against Sheffield United. In terms of FPL review projections, Haaland is out ahead, followed by Fernandes and Rashford, Saka and Martinelli in the top 10. Again, potentially a reason to give them all one more week before chopping and changing. Chilwell also in the top 10. If that Chilwell captaincy comes off, then hats off for such a bold decision. On to the experts team reveal next, and if you appreciate the time that goes into each of these videos, hit subscribe and drop it a like. These are weekly uploads throughout the season. So with all those transfers in mind, how has the experts team turned out for Game Week 3? It's Pickford in goal, a back three of Estepinian, Saliba and Chilwell, Saliba a new entrant into the team. In midfield, Saka, Rashford, Fernandes, Martinelli and Mbeumo, and up top it's Haaland captain and Jackson joins the team. So the Pickford and Turner rotation has not done well at all so far, but it is a luxury transfer, hence Pickford stays in the team. Gabriel and João Pedro are the 2 players to leave the team this week. It's likely to be the final week for Rashford and Bruno in many teams. After Forest, they face Arsenal, and they'll need to put some serious points to change managers' minds now. Archer last on the bench needs a mention just quickly. He's just got a move to Sheffield United, and he could end up a regular starter for 4.5 mil, which would be excellent. If you happen to be on a wildcard, then he looks like the 4.5 mil forward of choice. So each week we ask the experts to send in their final thoughts and tips. FPL Sharmanator says, this is turning out to be a budgetless season so far, with only 1 premium needed and lots of 6.5 to 7 mil mids offering lots of value. We don't need to spend the entire budget. Something to monitor and evolve our thinking. Amin Powell says, I haven't pulled the trigger on Watkins to Jackson. It feels wrong to do it. My only other alternatives are burn a transfer or do a goalkeeper transfer, neither which are ideal. Big decisions to make before the deadline. FPL Banger says, bench points are inevitable, don't stress out, injuries may happen and then you'll be glad to have a stacked bench. Flair Player says, with the wildcard in the back pocket, you can be more focused on short-term fixtures. Abby says, unlucky with Gabriel, but time to cut losses and move forward. Chris Dorset sold Salah for Mbeumo and he says, Salah is gone, he hasn't impressed me enough for his price tag, I'm hoping Bruno will finally start getting returns. Andrew Debenham says, Jackson has looked dangerous, so hopefully it'll be a thriller of a transfer rather than a bad one, as Chelsea want to be starting something with their fixture run. Jackson, don't stop until you get enough goals. 3 versus Luton please, heal the world and FPL. If you wanted me to sing that, sorry, not a chance Andrew. Anyway, that concludes episode 3 of The Experts. If you found it useful, please like the video and subscribe for weekly content to come all season. See you soon for the next one.